The little red book. There we go.
All right.
I'm at the STC Summit in Dallas, and I get to interview Whitney Hess. She's volunteered to answer a few questions. And so, Whitney, tell me, is this your first STC event?
It is. Alan Hauser approached me at the IDEA conference in October, and he asked if I would come attend STC Summit and present, and I hadn't really heard of the summit before. I had vaguely heard of STC previously, but I didn't know much, and I did a little investigation, and I proposed a couple talks, and here I am. I'm having a great time so far.
So, one question I have for you is there's kind of this concept of this old school people who don't see the value of Twitter, don't see the value of user experience, are just kind of old liners, so to speak. And then there's the new school of people who are kind of more on Twitter and more into social media and see the value of branching out in different roles. How do people go from old guard to new guard?
Well, it's funny that your field seems to be experiencing this at the same time as user experience. So tech comm and UX seem to be going through similar growing pains. So I think that there's a lot to learn from just that in and of itself, that maybe there's a larger community here, that we've siloed ourselves, but there is a greater tech community, I don't know what to call it, that's experiencing this. But in many ways, in the user experience field, there are people who kind of define what user experience is, or even in terms that came along before user experience, like information architecture or usability, and a lot of those people are further along in their careers, and they have been in control of the organizations and the conferences that have gone on until now, and now there's kind of a younger population that's coming in, and they define things less rigidly and use social media and are open to basically interacting with people of all different stripes, like a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different specializations coming together for a common goal. And you know, it's hard to say how does the new guard dethrone the old guard. I don't know that they really need to try, but I think that so long as the new guard keeps doing what the old guard wants, things like, you know, attending the conferences that they run and paying the dues that they ask for and things like that, they're just accepting what the old guard has always said was necessary in order to participate in the profession.
So you're saying that the old guard people, the old schoolers, kind of maintain the structure and keep the status quo because they're in control of the conferences, they're in control of publication venues and things like that. How can like the new school of thought people kind of convert the old people and bring them on board? Like what do you do?
I don't think you need to convert them. I think that they're going to make themselves irrelevant. And you already have found each other using things like Twitter, but also just finding kindred spirits at events like this. I think you all know who each other is, and it's just a matter of no longer accepting what the old guard wants you to do and no longer continuing to kind of pretend like you're a part of that status quo and just starting. I mean, it's not necessarily about starting your own organizations, but it's about not necessarily needing formal associations at all in order to validate who you are. You don't need that. There's communities that exist. You're professionals. You already make a tremendous impact on your own companies. So who needs the definitions that they prescribe?
So are you saying that like we don't even need big conferences and associations and things like that? All that is kind of becoming more and more irrelevant to I don't know, whatever professional field you're in?
In a lot of ways, I think so. I think that when we're just starting out as a community of practice, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance that we create to legitimize ourselves. And I see that happen with user experience, and I'm kind of sensing that once happened with TechCom, you know, that 60 plus years ago when with the invention of the personal computer, essentially, that there were people who came into this profession and maybe got marginalized, and so they created an organization in order to band together with like-minded people, and in order to really legitimize themselves, they created a lot of formality in the structure of the organizations and in the structure of their conferences, and that's just been carried out throughout. And so now new people who are coming into the field feel as though it's necessary to participate with a lot of those kind of regulated systems. And organizations and conferences are only two of the most prevalent things that I can name, but it's also the way in which you do your work, the way and the things that you call yourself, the titles that you have, the types of company that you work for, the activities you conduct, etc., that are all kind of taught throughout these communities. And perhaps those things aren't needed anymore because you've already risen to a status that far exceeds the value that these organizations might provide.
I had never thought of that these structures are really to just kind of validate and legitimize our sense of worth and importance. So now, how do people validate that, and how do people do that without these structures? Is it just through the social media that you can find this validation and so forth, or how do people do it now?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's always been this concept of safety in numbers. And I think that we just have it in less formalized ways. So when you go on Twitter and you're able to connect with a lot of people like you who also have similar titles in their bios, or who tweet about similar things, or share in the same interests, or have similar job responsibilities, that community exists. You don't necessarily need to have the affiliation, the same affiliation, in order to all be part of the same group. So I think it's just in many ways about kind of accepting that you've gotten to a certain maturity level, that it's a profession.
Yeah. And
some people may be certified and others might not be, but that ultimately it's well recognized, it's understood throughout the larger tech and business communities. UX is starting to get there. I mean, I think a lot of businesses still don't understand what user experience is, but we're starting to make those inroads, and I think in many ways technical communication is beyond us and has already really, staked its claim in the business community. And in many ways, whatever those formal structures were providing, it's there in informal ways. And I do understand that for a lot of people who are making career transitions, or are new to the field, or just just out of college, for instance, there needs to be some formality that will attract them, and I think that that's great. I don't think that the organizations should cease to exist. I just think that there are a lot of things that could be happening in tandem outside of the organization that's more organic, that will allow the new guard, so to speak, to find that they also have power, and they needn't be in service to the old guard.
Well, thanks, Whitney. If people want to find out more about your site, about you, where can they go?
Well, I write a blog at whitneyhess.com, and I'm always available via Twitter at Whitney Hess.
All right, thanks again.
Thank you.